All right, buckle up, Skull Faithful, because what you're about to hear is going to send shockwaves through the entire Vikings fan base. We've got insider talk, roster drama, a cornerback redemption arc, a rookie receiver fighting for his football life, and a front office about to make its first real power move under a brand new decision maker. And just when you think the drama's over, things take a hard left turn into cabins, beaches, and hot, sweaty camping tents. Stick with us because this one has it all. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now because we are about to break down everything you need to know before the Vikings take the field this season, straight from the inner circle, no filler, all fire. The headline everyone's been waiting for, ARE, the Vikings playoff bound. Let's rip the Band-Aid off immediately. The word on the street is simple. Yes, the Vikings are going to make the playoffs this season. But before you start printing your wildcard tickets, there's a catch, and it's a big one. Insiders are pointing to the schedule as the secret weapon here. Sources are drawing comparisons to the so-called every other year curse under previous coaching regimes, but this year feels different. Why? Because the schedule is stacked in Minnesota's favor in a way that almost feels too good to be true. Survive the opening 5 weeks, and suddenly the back half of the season turns into a home-cooked feast. 5 out of the final 7 games played right there in the friendly confines. No brutal trip out west into hostile territory, no shivering through a blizzard on the road in mid-November. Instead, the toughest road environments are avoided almost entirely, giving this team every excuse in the world to finish strong when it matters most. But, and this is the twist nobody wants to hear, none of that matters if the players don't show up and perform. A favorable schedule doesn't win you games. The team still has to go out there, execute, and prove they belong. So while the outside noise says playoffs are basically locked in, the reality is this: the door is wide open, but somebody still has to walk through it. Defense. The sleeping giant, here's where things get spicy. According to insiders close to the team, the defense isn't just going to be good this year, it's expected to be an absolute rock. There's real excitement building around what the coaching staff is planning to do with a fresh wave of younger talent, especially up front on the defensive line. Whispers are already circulating that this defensive unit could be the backbone that carries the entire team through the tougher stretches of the schedule. And that's before we even get to the offense. The offense, turnkey might be an understatement, picture this, a receiver room that's 3 players deep with legitimate talent. An offensive line that for once isn't riddled with injuries heading into the season. A key offensive tackle who's actually healthy for a change instead of watching from the sideline, and a renewed, almost stubborn commitment to establishing the run game. Whether it's one quarterback under center or another, sources say this offense has all the ingredients to be one of the most complete, plug-and-play units in the entire league. It wasn't like this last year, far from it, but the pieces have been rearranged, upgraded, and in some cases finally healed. The alarming part for opposing defenses? This isn't a hope it comes together situation, it's a why wouldn't it come together situation. The cornerback redemption arc nobody's talking about now. Let's talk about the most underappreciated man in the entire Vikings organization. A defensive back who insiders are calling one of the most criminally underrated corners in the entire league. 2 seasons ago, this guy was putting up numbers that turned heads. 6 interceptions in a single season, elite-level production. Last year, quieter, more of a ball hawk instincts, running cold type of year. But here's the twist that's got insiders buzzing. This is a player who does his job in complete silence. No social media theatrics, no flashy interviews, just a quiet professional who shows up to practice, stays after training camp sessions are done, and personally mentors the younger defensive backs on the roster, essentially training the very players who could one day take his job. Let that sink in for a second. Imagine being so secure, so selfless, that you're actively coaching up the guy who might replace you. That's the kind of leadership insiders say is flying completely under the radar in Minnesota. And here's the kicker. His ball hawk instincts are expected to come roaring back this season, fueled by something surprising. And inside the building is that this year's pass rush isn't going to hinge on one single dominant player. It's going to be a group effort, a death by 1,000 cuts approach that puts opposing quarterbacks under constant duress. And when the pressure's up front, the turnovers tend to follow in the secondary. Buckle up, because this corner might be about to remind the entire league why he deserves way more recognition than he's been getting. The rookie wide receiver fighting for his career, every good tabloid story needs an underdog, and this year, it's a speedy, dynamic third-round pick who spent most of last season buried on special teams and mop-up duty. Sources say he's a certified athletic freak, the kind of player who can take the top off a defense in an instant. But here's the brutal truth bomb. Cracking the top 3 in this receiver room is going to be an uphill climb, and insiders aren't convinced he's going to make it. Why? 2 words at the top of the depth chart that are basically bulletproof. A superstar receiver who's as rock solid as it gets, paired with another proven playmaker. That leaves scraps for everyone else to fight over. And it gets worse. There's already buzz building around another young receiver who lit up the offseason practices and turned heads during OTAs, positioning himself as the next name up. On top of that, there's a return specialist locking down a roster spot purely on special teams value, a former college teammate turned pro competitor, and yet another receiver in the mix fighting for scraps. Then there's the front office wrinkle that could seal this rookie's fate. The newly installed decision-maker at the top, the man who now has final say over who makes the 53-man roster, has ties to a couple of the receivers currently on the roster from his previous stop. And here's the cold, hard business reality. This new decision-maker didn't draft the rookie in question. Draft pedigree means nothing when you're staring down someone else's guy on the roster who came from your old stomping grounds. So is it over for this young speedster? Not necessarily. Insiders say his athletic upside is so tantalizing that even if the team tries to sneak him onto the practice squad, another team around the league would almost certainly swoop in and grab him off waivers. In other words, somebody's getting this kid on their active roster one way or another. The only question is whether it's Minnesota or a team calling from the outside. The new sheriff in town, what's the front office's next move? Let's talk power moves. There's a brand new football decision-maker running the show now, and everyone wants to know, what's his next big splash? Don't expect a blockbuster trade. Sources are shutting that speculation down immediately. But a depth-building free agent signing along the defensive line, that's absolutely in play. Adding another pass rusher to a unit that, as we already discussed, wants to spread pressure across multiple bodies instead of leaning on a single star, that tracks perfectly with the vision being built here. But the real fireworks might come from within. Multiple in-house contract extensions are reportedly on the table. A star offensive tackle. A star wide receiver. Another wideout entering the final year of his current deal. A promising defensive piece. The list of extension candidates runs deep, but here's where it gets dicey. This is a completely blank slate for the new decision-maker. Players that longtime fans and insiders alike see as no-brainer extensions might not be viewed the same way by a guy who's brand new to the building. Some of these veterans are getting up there in age, and there's a very real chance the new regime decides to let certain contracts simply expire rather than lock in aging players long-term. This is the wildest part of the entire situation. A guy who built his reputation with a wildly successful organization on the West Coast, now running his own show for the very first time without having had any say in this year's draft class or free agent additions. Everything from here forward is entirely his fingerprint. That's not just interesting, that's appointment viewing for the rest of the offseason. Bonus round. The off-the-field debates that got surprisingly heated just when you thought the football talk was wrapped up. Things took a hard turn into personal territory, and honestly, it might be the most entertaining part of this entire story. First up, the age-old Minnesota debate. Cabin up north or condo on the beach? And look, this answer is going to ruffle some feathers. The verdict landed somewhere in the middle: cabin up north anytime it's not summer, beach when the temperatures rise. But forced to pick just one option forever? The beach wins out purely on the logic that beachfront property holds and appreciates its value better over time. Still, there's something deeply, almost spiritually Minnesotan about owning that cabin up north. It's basically written into the state constitution at this point. Practical money math versus pure nostalgic tradition, an all-time classic tug-of-war. And then the debate that somehow got the most passionate response of the entire session: camping. Fully loaded with all the amenities or stripped down to the basics? Turns out there's a deep well of childhood memories here. Boy Scouts, family hunting trips, all of it. But somewhere along the way, life got busy and that connection faded a bit. Still, there's a very specific, very strong opinion buried in here. Late fall camping is elite. Crisp air, dead bugs, peaceful stillness. Early spring camping, also great. But hot, humid summer camping, an absolute nightmare. Bugs everywhere, sad makeshift confession that the family isn't fully on board. The kids are cool with camping in the backyard for one night and calling it a day. And camping enthusiasm from the rest of the household is, let's just say, limited, but there's a genuine, almost poetic appreciation for the idea of hiking deep into protected wilderness, reaching lakes that can only be accessed on foot or horseback, completely cut off from roads and cars, just fishing in total isolation. In a world that's become obsessed with screens and notifications, there's something almost sacred about fully unplugging like that. Call it a mental reset. Call it clearing the hard drive. Whatever you call it, it clearly struck a nerve. So what does all this mean for Vikings fans? When you zoom out and look at the full picture here, this is a franchise sitting at an absolutely fascinating crossroads. A favorable schedule, a breakout redemption season nobody's talking about yet. A talented rookie receiver fighting an uphill roster battle against business realities and a coaching staff mandate. And a brand new football czar about to make his very first real power moves with zero attachment to what came before him. This is not a wait-and-see season. This is a season loaded with storylines, tension, and stakes at every single position group. And whether you're locked in on the X's and O's or you just want to know whether the guy running the show would rather be at a cabin or on a beach, one thing is clear. This is going to be one of the most unpredictable, most talked about Vikings seasons in recent memory. So here's what we need from you. If this breakdown got you fired up, smash that like button right now. It genuinely helps this channel more than you know. Drop a comment down below and tell us, are you buying the playoff hype? Or do you think this is all just off-season optimism talking? And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because we are just getting started. And you do not want to miss what's coming next. Skol, and we'll see you in the next one.